So it's my pleasure to be with the winners of the Outstanding Compact Case competition at the Case Centre Awards and Competitions 2022. With me are Karen Harlos of University of Winnipeg, Alison Konrad from Ivey Business School, and Lucas Monzani from Ivey Business School. And they're going to speak about their compact case, which is itself split into three mini cases. Casual Fridays Gone Wrong, Dial 911, Healthcare in Distress, and A Toxic Academic Environment. This is a very welcome first award for the authors and for the University of Winnipeg, and a second successive win for Ivey Business School in this category. The case is an extraordinary capture of three different scenarios while remaining within the compact framework. I'm looking forward to going behind the scenes with the authors, and I'm going to start by asking this question. What is the theme across the three mini cases?
So the overarching theme is workplace bullying and mistreatment. And one of the ideas that propelled us to write three mini separated cases is that we want to tackle this unfortunate phenomenon from many different angles.
I'll speak to the healthcare one, the Dial 911, and this emerged from some research that I was doing, funded by SSHRC, the Social Sciences Humanities Research Council of Canada, where we were looking in depth at healthcare and in particular at nurses and their experiences of mistreatment and bullying. And in this case, the protagonist is a nurse who was feeling mistreated by a patient who was overly demanding, bullying, hostile, intimidating. And the nurse felt that she was also kind of embedded within a bullying culture by management. She was not getting the support and the guidance that she needed in order to care for the patient and also protect herself.
I can talk about Mary Beth Gassman, the head of the academic unit that's in the third case. This is a very interesting case because it also addresses sexualization and a highly sexual workplace as harassing and bullying. And so it has the overlap with lessons on sexual harassment that can be integrated into the lesson, which is one of the strengths of this case, is that it interweaves with diversity and inclusion lessons. And this individual is a very top scholar with several graduate students and research assistants whom she talks about in a sexual way, very explicitly, and creates a very uncomfortable environment for years at a university. And so this sort of the third case in the series, what it does is it shows the organizational systems that allow this to continue happening for years, even though it starts to get known that this is happening across the department. So that is the reason this case is very valuable. Also, it's a nice gender bender. For most sexual harassment cases, we usually see male protagonists. This demonstrates that women in power can be equally dominating through sexualizing subordinates.
Yes, and the first case is a legal case that is from our province in Ontario, which was brought also by another member of the SSHRC grant that Karen was talking about us. So all these cases are either public knowledge or based on qualitative research and evidence. So it makes additional strength to the compact case.
That first case actually, as you noted, comes from an actual complaint of racial discrimination that was made to the Ontario Human Rights Commission. And it's a case that is quite different. And I think that's also a strength of these three cases as a set, is each one is set in different industries, very different protagonists, different dynamics that are going on. And the case of Casual Fridays Gone Wrong refers to a case of so-called joking that has gone wrong, where a manager teases an employee about his clothing on a day when we're kind of meant to wear casual clothing, and calls it ghetto clothing. And that taps into some deep-seated historic, social, cultural discrimination pain. When the employee says, I don't like that terminology, please don't use that terminology, he doesn't get a response that satisfies him. The teasing doesn't feel, he doesn't feel that it stops. He starts to feel excluded in the workplace, doesn't want to take, and his coworkers unfortunately build on this and also continue the teasing. And when it came to the tribunal, when the case was heard, it was deemed to be a case of a racially poisoned work environment.
It seems to me that the set of three cases have two huge challenges in them. One is a technical challenge, and in writing a suite of three cases and yet conforming to the compact case format. And the other is a challenge of writing in this area generally, where there are sensitivities and some teachers find it difficult to teach. So I wondered if you could talk us through the case writing process a little bit, just to say how you addressed both of those challenges.
And I'll speak to the case again with 911 that I was most involved with directly. Yes, absolutely. The challenge of sensitivities and making sure that both the person, the individual who was mistreated, as well as her organization, was comfortable with what was said, what was reported, and what would be published. The biggest challenge, I think, through all of this with all of us was brevity. And how do you keep it concise while recognizing the complexity of the dynamics and the situations that are going on? So these are big challenges.
Our knowledge of diversity and inclusion research informed the choices of the cases as well. So for each of the cases, we have a diversity challenge as well as a bullying challenge. The ambiguous language is the key challenge to the first case. Casual Friday's gone wrong. And that's where students can learn the lesson that even if you use language that's ambiguous and you intend it as a joke or neutral or positive even, if there is historical baggage to that term that semantically links it to oppression and oppressive identities, that creates an environment that is a racially poisoned environment. And so you cannot use language and say, well, I'm not responsible for the history of that word. I only meant it this way. And so therefore it's okay. No, that is not okay. So that's the diversity challenge in the first one.
So I can speak to the second part of your question, Richard. So how we can bring all these brief cases together and have a cohesive narrative throughout the case writing. And to quote Kurt Lewin, there's nothing more practical than a good theory. And actually that's what we did with this case writing. We developed a theoretical framework that integrates this unfortunate phenomenon at different levels of analysis. We had the dyadic or one-on-one with the first case. We have the more collective group dynamics on the second case, and a more institutional issues on the third case. So that also allows us, when we teach the case, to show that workplace bullying and mistreatment is not just a single person issue, but it's a much larger phenomenon that requires a wider lens.
To me, the case really plays to the strengths of the case method, because taking it into the classroom, you're really able to explore in a case discussion all the nuance and subtlety and various sensitivities that are around the scenarios that you explore. So I'm very interested to know more about how the case actually plays in the classroom and your experience of having taught it.
For me, it was a very, very interesting experience to teach the case, but I learned a lot from my students. I felt that, I had created a good, safe environment to not just lead a conversation, but actually gain further insights when you teach the case. Things that, we may have unconscious bias or blind spots that can be, the students can also be facilitating, and they all get excited, in feeling that we're giving voices to minorities that, been troubled or been suffering at work, which is acceptable in any shape or form.
Yeah, I found that teaching this case is it goes very smoothly. And really this is Karen and Lucas's work in developing the theory. The great strength of this case is also in the teaching note that was developed based on Lucas and Karen's theory that came from their qualitative and quantitative research on bullying and harassment. So I can overlap that theory onto the three cases. The first case, we reveal the concept of the toxic triangle and how bystanders to an event don't remain bystanders for long. And there's a great example of that. In the second case, we see this really chaotic managerial and leadership moment where there's a lot of turnover among the leaders. And so the leader never quite connects to what is going on. And so that shows when you have these spaces and disruption in organization, that's when you have to worry about these dynamics and really pay attention. And then the third case really gives students the opportunity to wrestle with, well, if we were responsible, what would we do? What kind of solutions can we develop to prevent this from happening? And when it does happen, because it will, what can we do to mitigate the damage? So it builds nicely across those three levels of analysis because of the strong theorizing developed by Lucas and Karen.
How this came about was when I was invited to Ivy to do a talk on my research based on this funded research from SSHRC. And in doing the talk shortly after, it was Alison who said, there is a need for this information to be written about and produced and published as cases to get into the classroom. And it was Alison's guidance all along the way for the selection of the cases to represent the breadth and the diversity that they do. So Alison really deserves huge credit for seeing the potential and the contribution of this work.
I have to say I've enjoyed this conversation enormously, and it's a pleasure to see how well you work together as a team, getting along so well, and also bringing different strengths and insights to the whole of the team. Congratulations again. Thank you for this conversation. It's a wonderful case resource, and you are thoroughly well-deserved winners. Congratulations.